Have you guys experienced yourself as that stranger of consequence? It's sort of designed to have encounters, and I'd read it off earlier, to have encounters with others that can be important and potentially mutative to both of them. But the point is, you were a stranger, you showed up, suddenly the things you were saying were consequential to them. And then how did that work out for you? Do you recognize this in your life?
Yeah, I mean, recently I went to a dinner party and was seated next to someone, and I really, as a projector, I do try to work on the invitation, but sometimes you can sense that it's there. And I just love reading people's astrology and human design for them, and trying to figure out like what is bothering them, or where are they being held back. And so yeah, that happens all the time, where I'm just seated next to someone at a dinner party. All I really want to talk about is, them and their astrology. And then yeah, recently I was able to like in the span of the dinner, like help her recognize something about herself, or solve. I guess I'm always surprised that people don't have deeper insight about themselves, you know? Um, and yeah, I just love doing that.
That's awesome, because we need all the help. Well, I can only speak for myself. At least I definitely need all the help I can get figuring out who I am. And I think that's why I've always loved astrology so much, is like, now that I know I'm in this reflector, it's like, it at least gave me this thing that's like, oh yeah, no, that totally, yep, yeah. It gave me this thing, because I didn't really feel it myself, and I'm not a feeler. I'm all up here, and I'm all airy, I'm all Gemini, and then this weird reflectory thing. And so it's hard to figure out, but that kind of helped me.
I've had an incident too that was similar, where I was talking about selling my house, and I was selling a townhouse and jumping into a house literally across the street. Like, I moved across the street, and this lady was also a single mom, and she was like, oh wow, you're selling your house? And I'm like, yeah, like, I'm getting top dollar for it right now. I'm gonna sell it because I'm gonna max out on this condo, like it's a townhouse, I'm gonna jump to the house across the street while it's in construction and it's gonna build. Next thing you know, she reaches out to me through the friend that we knew. And she's like, I sold my house. I can't believe how much I sold it for. I bought a new house. I'm so scared of how this is going to play out. And here we are now, like a year later, she just moved in. She's like, I love my new house. I ended up getting 50 grand over list price. Thank you for initiating that. I would have never thought that I should sell my house and that I would cap out on this townhouse, because she was also in a townhome. So I just thought that was super interesting, that like one little comment of being like, oh, I'm doing this. And yeah, it's scary, but it's worth it. I know it's going to work out in the end. Like, you just had this internal knowing that it's the time to jump, And so that was interesting.
That's very cool.
I feel like learning this about the 5-1 profile, when I first learned about kind of the stranger of consequence component of it, it encouraged me to, open my mouth to strangers. Like, if I'm sitting on a plane, strike up a conversation, or looking for something to respond to as a generator. But once I got that thing to respond to, instead of holding back, like, oh, I don't know if they want it, just kind of taking it like, okay, well, this is what's coming up for me. I'm hearing this intuitively. I'm just going to share it, and whatever will be. And I feel like, since then, I feel like there are all kinds of seeds out there that, who knows, what has happened. You don't always hear, right? You don't always, the story doesn't always come back around, like you just said, Jamie, full circle. But I feel like they're, as 5-1s, we tend to, like, it's like the lupin lady. We sprinkle our, lupin seeds around, and then things bloom, but we don't necessarily always know, we can't always see the beautiful flowers, but it's just part of who we are to sprinkle those seeds.
I love that. It's true.
I don't know if you all have ever had this experience, but at least learning about this, I always felt like, and even now I feel like I'm a very transparent, very open, like, ask me anything. And I would always be really shocked by people who just could not understand me at all, right? Like the vast majority of people not able to get me, even though I felt like I was being completely transparent. And I realized through this understanding of, the stranger of consequences, just how much I could just relax in that the people who I'm here to impact, no matter how transparent I am, they're just not going to really get me. And so it just allowed me to embrace being misunderstood and being okay with that, and actually seeing that as my gift to others. And I keep on my, like, just as a reminder, I keep a picture on my wallpaper on my computer that familiarity breeds contempt, and that it's okay. That helps me to just remind myself, like, it's okay if not everybody fully gets you. And in fact, that's actually a gift to them, because people who you're close to, it doesn't work on. It literally does not, like, your magic does not work on them at all if they know you too much.
I find that interesting. Do you think it's because they know you? Because that goes back to my comment of like how I was in 2 marriages and felt like neither one of my ex-husbands really knew me. They think that they knew me, but I don't feel like they saw who I truly was. So it's interesting because I agree with you. My wallpaper is nothing changes if nothing changes. So I love change. So yeah.
I remember questioning one time before knowing my human design, like, am I who they think I am, or am I who I think I am? Like, not, just because I was like seeing, I don't know if this is a 5-1 thing, but or maybe this is just me having an open G, but like I tend to like see myself differently through whoever I'm with. And maybe learning more about myself that way. But yeah, I guess I'm glad to know that I actually am who I am and not who maybe they think I am.
That's definitely an open G center thing, Sarah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a 5-1 thing, because you're so right, Jamie, to recognize they don't know you. All 5-1s, all fifth lines, wherever they are, the other knows first their projection on you. How have you guys learned to identify correct versus incorrect projections coming in on you? Now that we've all determined, you guys realize this stuff comes in. What have you done with that? What experiences have helped shape this recognition? Because you've had experiences, you've recognized various versions of it. We're now talking about it. So what experiences have sort of helped shape that, and how have you learned to identify correct versus incorrect projection?
Well, how many times do you need to be burned before you stop talking about a certain subject? I mean, so yeah, I think after many times of just being burned at the stake, and sometimes I think it was, at least in my experience, sometimes it was a matter of taking on the wrong projection about like the first line knowledge that I held, but also like the use of that knowledge, like how I was using that knowledge to help someone. And for me, I think it's been a lot of patience, which doesn't really work well as a manifesting generator, but having patience around knowing I don't have to figure everything out at this moment, that the more that I just kind of sit with certain things and pay attention to similar projections showing up again and again and again, and then assessing I do a lot of like writing in notebooks, and I keep all my notebooks. And so that's also one way that I just like check myself for, is this like a projection that I can fulfill? I go to my notebooks, because that's where I always have like books and notebooks literally all over my place.
Who else is like that? I am.
Like my bed has like 6 books
Yeah.
on different topics, and there's like a bunch of different notebooks on all those different topics at the same time. But having that like very practical, it's like written down, I can go back in there and look, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did learn about this 3 years ago, right? And then I've done this with it so far. Like I've actually embodied it, or I've supported people who have been able to apply it, and that helps me to feel secure enough to fulfill on projections. And sometimes that, I will just be honest, sometimes that process takes me a long time, because the insecurity piece, I don't know. It's taken me like a few years to get comfortable and even speaking about teaching wealth, teaching about money, even though people have been seeking that from me for years at this point, right? And really like embracing that. So time, patience, and like keeping track of my foundation, because I always feel like a little insecure about it.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I'm just really aware of what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And I'm kind of stubborn about like, if I don't want to do that, I'm not going to do it. I wasn't always that way. I think because I think before I understood myself, like I would succumb to pressure and feel like, oh, they're expecting me to do this. I need to do it. But now I'm just like very resolute about I'm only going to do what I want to do. And I just assess, does that sound like fun or no? There's like a great quote from Kim Cattrall where she said, I don't want to be in any situation, even for an hour, where I'm not enjoying myself. And I really feel that.
Yeah.
That took a long time for me to learn.
Yeah.
But now I'm standing in my power saying, yeah, I'm not really too interested in that. And for me, it's like, does it make me excited? Like, because if it makes me excited, then I have the energy, I have the creativity, I have the things that I can like push into that. But when it's like draining and like, oh, it's like such a heaviness and a chore, I'm just like procrastinating, and like, more shiny squirrels come across my desk that like get me off track. And then I'm like, oh, I got to get back to that. And then it's just like this daunting, never ending task that you're just like, why am I even doing this? Like, I don't want to do this, And then you feel like, I got to finish this or I'm going to look like the fool. Because for me, I don't know if that's a 5-1 thing, but I never want to look like the fool.
Oh, yeah.
Egg on my face. I never want someone to interpret that I didn't do something that I said that I would, because I am very integrity. It goes back to that integrity that I want to fulfill what I've said I would. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I would just go ahead.
I was about to add something else, so go ahead if you're responding.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I was just gonna add that, like, for those of us with an emotional wave, I do try to remember, okay, don't like answer right away, because maybe in an hour I will feel like saying yes. I will be in the mood for that. But that's all.
Yeah, no, that ties into what I was going to say, which was, using your authority as the default, which I feel like being an emotional is, about clear as mud most times. So it's just like having that patience, like Nikosi mentioned as well. And then personally, I feel like the right projections make me feel deeply seen, which Sarah, my G center is undefined as well. So, that can be a little tricky too. Like, who am I feeling like right now? And what is that? But there is definitely a deep sense of feeling seen, and so then I feel like I can, respond and take action, or those are the more aligned, those are the things that tend to be more in alignment versus, those projections that come in that are incorrect or just, yeah, I mean, I think they feel heavy. Jamie, that was a great word. And also just uncomfortable. And I don't know, as a sacral being, I find myself, shrinking away from it. Like it does not pull me in, right?
What experiences have helped you stand on solid, practical, authentic foundations, like the experiences that bring you like where you've got both feet on the ground? Which of these experiences have you experienced best operate within the the expectant field? Like people are expecting things from you, and ultimately you have to have this foundation, or it's not going to work. It just won't work. And even though sometimes you'll step in without one, and you already know you're nervous about that. So, which things have helped you stand on solid ground as it relates to this first line and just this capacity to bring a result? Because I'm guessing every one of you knows this sense of this expectational feeling to at least bring a result. I mean, you don't even need to know your design to understand that question. So there you have it.
For me, like just when I work some of my day jobs, like when I come in and I'm like new and anxious and I'm like, that uncomfortable, like I'm the only one who doesn't know how to do this yet. I like to really like ask a lot of questions and figure out what the goal is, because their process of doing things may not be the most efficient one. So I like, if I can understand everything, like the concept behind it and understanding everything from a granular level, then I can maybe build a new process that makes more sense. Yeah.
Wow, I love that, especially as a manifestor. Yeah, are you sure you're not a manifestor? No, because seriously, it's the big picture thinking. Like, okay, what's your end result that you want?
Mhm.
And let's see. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have actually seen how the Japanese train system was actually created by microbes and bacteria, and how bacteria actually showed the shortest distance of where these trains should go. It's really cool. It's in biomimicry. But anyways, I agree with that, where it's just like, where's the big goal going? Where's the focus? What is the end result? And how can we get there?
Mhm.
And that kind of goes back to our practical solutions. Like what we've been saying all along is like, we have the answer and we can see it very clearly. Other people might not. But in order for them to feel like we've fulfilled that projection, we give them that answer. For me also, though, I also, so as a manifestor, I guess the not self theme is anger. So if I feel angry, I feel like if I look back and take a step back of when I get triggered by something, then I'm like, oh, this is something that's triggering me because either it's not true or it's being misinterpreted or I'm not communicating the way I need to initiate. And so for me, my role is to initiate people into action and then just get out of it, like start planting the seed and then leave. I'm not a good finisher. That's where all the the generators come in and finish that kind of stuff, because I get bored with it and I'll lose interest. I can find different directions in the same project, but I constantly want to find something new to like dig into and learn more and grow more and see different avenues. So yeah, I agree with that, Sarah.
I'll just add, for me, I feel like this is something that I kind of go back and forth with a lot. I don't know how, I mean, yes, there's like a 5-1 component, but I'm a Virgo moon and south node and a Pisces sun and north node. So I always have this internal tension that's happening around really desiring that practicality, that groundedness, that very clear, like logical, do this, you get this result. And then I have this Pisces sun, Pisces north node that is very spiritual, intangible. So the way that I have started to like make a almost like a practice to create a solid practical foundation that I feel like I can have solid footing on. Is I'm always looking for in my own life and also in the people that I'm supporting and guiding in mentorship. I'm always looking for the threads between the spiritual or psychological shifts, etc., that then create a practical result. Because my default is like, I have a background in marketing. I'm like, let's just go to what's the marketing solution? What's the business strategy, right? This very like analytical thing. But I know that part of my work in this world is really to be in the energetic, psychological, spiritual aspect of things and bring those concepts in a really grounded way. And I feel like I'm doing a good job on that. I get a lot of feedback that I'm a very grounded and like just real life. Like, yes, I could talk about aliens and spirits and all the fun things. But I'm always like, yeah, but what are you going to do with that? Right? I'm like, what are you going to, like, if I tell you that there are aliens, how is that going to affect your life? What you going to do with that information? And then I just stay away from having some of those conversations unless there's some way to make it practical. But I do give myself permission to go down those rabbit holes, even if I don't find an immediate practical application for it, because sometimes you never know. Like sometimes those things that just seem so off the wall that you had curiosity about that seem to not make any sense at all actually can come into use later down the road. So I try to just not have judgment about it. But when I am in relationship with people or supporting someone and like creating solutions, I go back to the, like, what are you going to do with this?
I'll just add that I think with the 5-1 profile and that tendency to want to dive into new things all the time, for me anyway, sometimes I just do that quietly, and sort of start to build my knowledge base around it without really sharing. And then when I feel like, I know some stuff, then I can just sort of share informally. And that helps to build this foundation where I feel a little bit more confident. I may experiment and play around with the, new material or knowledge or whatever. And that all of those smaller steps just help me to kind of build that generator momentum to continue along with it and build that like strong foundation.
I was just going to say that I used to have a business partner and his motto was say yes now and then figure out how. And that used to make me so uncomfortable and before I knew my human design. And I would see that as a strength that I needed to work on, that, that was a flaw I had. And I just really wanted to be prepared, and I did not like saying yes to something if I didn't know yet if I could fulfill that. And so that it was just like, of course he's a 6'3", so that works for him, but it definitely doesn't work for a 5-1.
Tell us about your radar, as in, do you guys see it coming? Do you ask yourself, what do they want from me? I think they want something from me. There's a nagging feeling. Do you sort of have that in you? It is called paranoia, but it's intelligent paranoia. We're supposed to be paranoid sometimes, right? I mean, it's like sometimes it's happening. So what do they want from me? And can you tell that they are projecting their hopes and wants onto you? Also, some projections are obviously positive and you can speak to those too, but just what's your propensity for what do they want from me? Just generally speaking, and it can be on minor little things, just little things. It's you're married and your husband walks out, it's like, okay, what does he want from me now? So it can be very mundane things or big things. What do they want from me?
I don't feel it coming on. Like you said, like, do you see it coming down the street or something? I don't like approach it like that. To me, people just say stuff and like the words are wrong, or like, I don't know. And they don't even realize like what they're saying. And like, I'm going to tell you A, B, and C, and you're going to reply with J. And that has everything to do with you and nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? It's like, I can just kind of like see behind.
I mean, I also have a Scorpio moon and a lot of aspects like that. And I definitely have like, find myself suspicious of people's intentions. And I feel like I mean, maybe also being a projector, I feel like it's just so easy to see. And I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm like always surprised when I'm like, didn't you just like, can't you see through that person?
Yeah, I think that once I caught on to the number of people who come into my world and have ulterior motives, I can always sense it. And I will, like, I just straight up ask people all the time, like, okay, what are your expectations? What do you want from this or from me or this experience, right? And I just find that so many people either are completely dishonest with themselves or completely dishonest with me, right? And so I always just file that information away and try to use discernment on that. But also, I don't know, I always have some like hopefulness and some maybe you call it naivety around that, because I'm like, oh, but maybe. And then every time it
works.
Kicks me in the butt every time. And yeah, just trusting that when people show you who they are, believe them. And I feel like the older you get, the bigger the cost is. Like when you're young and you don't really have much going on in your life, you don't have a lot of responsibilities, you just allow more of that, right? And I feel like the older that I've gotten, the more that I pay attention to that BS meter. And yeah, it almost becomes like a protection mechanism, but it is always tricky to figure out like, okay, am I reacting out of trauma from something before or someone before? Or is it coming from me feeling into how this person's showing up? And deciphering between the two is like consistent work.
I had another thing just as you were saying that when one of my business partners, they wanted to buy into the company. And so we kept presenting these options of this is how you can come in, you can buy units, you can buy shares, blah, blah, blah. But then it got to the point where they were like, well, we want to buy your shares and then you can sell them to us and we'll let you buy them through the JV, a different amount of shares. And so like, just as you were saying that, it was kind of like you could kind of see the big picture also, like being a 5-1, you could see like, well, that's not going to make sense. And you're trying to get me out by giving you the shares. And now I'm at your mercy to give me something back. Like I was just like, that doesn't seem like this is legit. Like, why are we going about it that way? Why? You know? So yeah, like the bigger picture and things also kind of plays into like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, what is your ulterior motive or what is the end result that you're trying to get? And does that road that you're saying we should go down, does that make sense? Is it practical? Is it logistical? Is it feasible? Like all of those things. So yeah, I agree with that too. Interesting conversation, guys.
I've learned to trust myself more than other people usually.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate to learn that. That's a hard lesson to learn. It's one of those that takes a little moment, few too many times you've asked other people for advice and I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
I can solve problems better than anyone. Why am I asking anybody else? Come on. Figure it out myself.
I can definitely relate to the naivete that you mentioned, Makosi. And then just I think hope for humanity and like belief in other people that they're just gonna tell it to you straight. But obviously, over time, I think for me, I have always asked, just tell me exactly what you mean. Don't like beat around the bush or whatever. Just like come out with it. And what I've obviously learned through experience is that like people aren't always going to do that, aren't often going to do that, and I need to trust like what I hear in their voice, as they're saying, like the tenor of their voice. And I was curious if that comes into play for any of you as well, as just like picking up on those other cues, to help you really discern the honesty and whether or not people are seeing the real you when they're communicating.
I think for me, like having my open G center, I like how to, and maybe as a reflector, Andy, you can relate to this, but it's like, do I like who I am when I'm with them? If I'm not enjoying me, then I lack trust in them.
Yeah. And that really is the bottom line. You just have to, and it's hard. I say that I'm about to be like, it's really the thing. You just got to trust yourself, even though I have no trust in myself because I'm all empty and stuff and I'm whatever. So I don't really know what it's like to like trust your gut. I don't know what that feels like. I just sometimes, I don't know. I just make decisions. I can't really even tell you how or why because it seems logical and it seems right. And I don't know where in my body I feel it. I don't really think I feel it anywhere in my body. I think it all comes from my head because that's where my decisions come from. But I'm also this like pragmatic, like, let's put everything together. Let's make it all work.